I'd like to go ahead and introduce our final closing keynote here, Jared Dagan from Brandware Public Relations, and he'll be speaking on the emerging social media landscape. Please welcome Jared.
I want to thank everyone for showing up. I know it's been a long day. I mentioned, my title is Social and Digital Media Manager. I was sitting down to dinner with some friends last night, and I'm like, that's the coolest title ever. And I'm like, little do they know that I'm basically paid to sit on Facebook and Twitter all day, like all of you guys. And so when it came time to actually go out into the world, I took a step that my advisor actually deemed the MBA equivalent of running off and joining a circus. I went and I joined an agency. So what I really want to do today is talk about all of that in the context of the future. What's next? Everybody wants to know what's next. And I feel like the best way to start talking about what's in the future is to talk a little bit about what happened in the past. When I was just starting out in social media, maybe about 2004, 2005, organizations kind of looked like this. You had the CEO up in his office, and he was thinking to himself, yeah, I'm reading the Wall Street Journal, I'm reading Financial Times, I'm reading about this thing called social media. Seems like all the cool kids are doing it, we should do it as well. You started with one person in an organization who's extremely passionate about it. And as that person matured, they gained knowledge. They started to learn about the different business practices and bringing it in to the larger social media process. And what the result is you guys right here. You guys are interested enough in social media that you want to make it work for your organizations. So that brings us to the present and where we are. You start off with what we call your cash cows, though I just call them cows because there really is no cash in social media. If anything, there's credit card transactions. Your cows are your safe bets. These are your blue chip stocks. Things like Facebook and WordPress blogs and Flickr and LinkedIn and Dig and even email. These are all platforms that have proven themselves time and time and time again. We're starting to get data that shows that the right engagement strategies do prove fruitful. You start moving over to your stars. These are your biotech stocks. These are things like Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Pinterest. These all have high growth and high mind share. These are the stocks that you want to be in right now. However, one of the dangers of investing in stars is that they can move into question marks. They can also evolve into cows and make you a lot of money, but the whole idea is that question marks have high growth and low mind share. These are the X factor. These are the stocks that look good, but you don't know quite how they're going to perform. You have things like SoundCloud, StumbleUpon, Google+, and Tumblr. All of those I consider in the question marks category. And finally, the fourth category is what we call dogs. These are probably slower investments. These are ones that you really don't want to put any time or money into. These things include Path, which I still haven't seen truly take hold. Grooveshark's cool. MySpace is still moving along. Posters is cool, but if you have a blogger, anybody still have a blogger? So the idea here is that social media has moved from being an if question to a how question. Your organizations have finally decided that we're going to dedicate money. We're going to dedicate full-time employees to help manage this. So where do we go from here? What's the future? Is it a new platform? Is it a new app? Would you guys like to know? It's really cool. You guys are going to love it. But not yet. Let's talk a little bit about what social media is not. So the future of social media is not. The future of social media is not about apps. Don't get me wrong, apps are great. Apps are fantastic. Apps can be a great investment if they are aligned properly with your business goals. The trouble with apps is that most apps aren't used after 90 days. So once you download an app, there's usually about a 90-day period where you may go back to it, but then after that you completely forget it. The second piece is mobile technology. Again, don't get me wrong, I love mobile. I love the ability to take a website from stagnant to responsive, meaning it fits on all platforms. However, what we've seen, especially with Apple, is that with the rate of innovation, pegging your strategies to a single platform is usually not a good idea because the technology is always moving forward. The third thing that the future of social media is not is about novelty. How many of you guys recall or have read the case study on the Old Spice Guy campaign? So Old Spice was a very good ROI campaign. on the surface. P&G put a lot of big bucks behind it. And the results were actually pretty good. I think there was about 3 weeks after the campaign, they were looking at a 55% sales lift. And then afterwards, they were looking at a total of about 102% in the 3 months after that. And that was great. It lifted Old Spice to be the #1 men's body wash, and that's really great for them. But does anybody know the one mistake that they made? Anybody read this case study? They didn't activate on that huge audience that they attracted. They had over 120,000 followers on Facebook, but they only tweeted 2 to 3 times per week after that. They didn't try to engage. They didn't try to capitalize on it. They didn't try to do anything. You spent all of that money. Think about how much money you had to pay just to hire Mustafa to do that ad. And all the time you had to do to make all those additional videos. And they didn't do anything about it. You're putting money, but you're not getting any long-term investment out of it. The question is, if the future of social media, and don't get me wrong again, apps, mobile technology, and to a certain extent, big spend, they are a part of the future, but they are not the future. They are not the thing that you guys want to walk out of here and tell your executive teams they need to invest in. So the question is, what do you need to tell them they should invest in? What is the future of social media? And it is one word. Number one, intelligence. It's about intelligence, but it's about particular types of intelligence. 2, intelligence is not a given in our industry. And I'll give you an example why. How many of you recall this from last year? Kenneth Cole put out a tweet during the Arab Spring. And they said, millions are in an uproar over # Cairo. Rumor is they heard about our new spring collection that is now available online. How many of you think that was intelligent? Cute, maybe. Land grab, maybe. Not really intelligent. The problem with this is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. We've seen this from KitchenAid, we've seen this from Chrysler, we've seen this with Motrin Moms. We have folks who are at the helm of these social media handles, and I'm not saying you guys are a part of it because you're obviously interested in business practices and business goals, but what was this supposed to accomplish? Was this supposed to reinforce the idea of a company being a truly responsible global citizen? Not really. So again, I reinforce the fact that intelligence is the future of social media, and I'll specifically tell you step by step why. The first part is intelligence about your customers. We've heard a lot in this conference about the different measurement techniques that you use in order to understand your customers, to segment your customers. Well, after a certain number of cycles, we start to be able to see some patterns. This I really call my family model of social media engagement. As engagement goes up, you start to evolve. And we start with my grandmother. My grandmother is what I call an information seeker. She's relatively new online, and she likes to go online to find information. She wants to know what time the drugstore is open, what time the bagel shop's open, what time her favorite movie is playing. And that's okay for her. She loves all of these social media channels and online channels because it allows her to get information. But as you are on social media longer, you start to move up this curve. And the next part you get to is where my mother currently is, and that's the sharer category. How many of you get emails from your family saying you have to see this, and it's an attachment of like a photo of some really cute kitten or cute dog in a costume or something? You know, it's pretty much universal. So this is where, you know, just finding information isn't enough. You've got to start sharing it. As engagement goes up, you get to credibility seekers. This is the like my status. This is some of my younger friends. They always want me to like their status. Why? Because they want me to bestow my credibility on them. They want to know that the things they find and the things they share are acknowledged, and they want me to affirm their own self-worth by doing it. And finally, just sharing things and getting likes isn't enough, and you become an authority seeker. This is the stage where you start to produce the content. It's not just enough to be seen as credible, you must be seen as the creator. Now, the interesting thing to note here is just like Maslow's theory, these are not linear, nor are they exclusive. So you can be an information seeker and a credibility seeker in 2 different sectors. But the idea here is that if you start to plan your strategies based on information that you find and the segmentation strategies that you've heard during this conference, you will start to see that creating strategies that really hit at what your customers want is not so difficult. Now, the second piece of intelligence, or the second type of intelligence that's really important in the future, building the future of social media, is your bottom line. Who of you in here would not like to see your bottom line go up? Excellent. So the idea here is that the bottom line is important to all of us. That's why we're here. We understand that it's not worth investing in unless we're able to get an ROI. But the idea here is that we've heard a lot about KPIs. How do you start taking KPIs and advancing them to a point in time where you can start to evaluate ROI? This is the model that I have identified as probably the most effective in building social media strategies. The first thing you do is you talk to your salespeople. Salespeople are probably the furthest from social media. Maybe the accountants are further away than that. But the sales guys, they're caring about the leads. They want the money. So talk to them, because they're the ones who are going to know what it takes to get a customer from completely unaware of your company to actually making a purchase. They're going to know all of their objections, and they're going to know all of the questions. So what you do is you identify the steps that a customer has to take in order to purchase your product. In this particular case, I've selected out awareness, interest, desire, and action, very simple, AIDA model, and I've lined it up with some KPIs that you've heard about. Whether you do it through Raven, whether you do it through Radian6, whether you do it through Sprout Social, you can get these KPIs and align them to each other. The dirty little secret in analytics is that numbers by themselves don't mean anything. Absolutely zip. Numbers on top of numbers, on the other hand, that starts to build a story. So let's talk about reach. The number of your Facebook followers divided by the number of click-throughs you have. That's your conversion rate, and so on and so forth, down through content consumption and point-of-sale activation. This starts to show you how effective your social media is. It's a very simple process, but if you build your KPIs with your team, so I'm talking about sit down with your CEO, sit down with your salespeople, sit down with anybody who will listen to you, and decide on the KPIs that correspond to each of these categories. And then say, this is what we're going to measure ourselves on. And then keep on coming back to those and measure and measure and measure and measure. And soon enough, you'll find you'll start to get more and more buy-in. You take the stuff that you learn here and you use it to advance your organization. And that actually brings us to our third and final part, the third and final type of intelligence, and that is social media intelligence about your organization. Whereas social media started off as maybe a communications thing, maybe it's a marketing thing, maybe it's a PR thing. Social media can become much more than that. It's becoming less siloed. In fact, the future of social media as it relates to intelligence within your organization is to be a complete business system. Again, we'll give an example of our product funnel: awareness, interest, desire, action, and each of the silos that would logically be aligned to them. Public relations with awareness. How do you get people to become aware of your product? You get a big placement in a newspaper. How do you get them interested? Well, you provide information to them. How do you get them to desire it? Well, you start getting them to play with your brand. You give them an interactive website, email, and digital ads. And finally, how do you get them to take action? You create location-based promotions, point of sale, mobile transactions. But the idea is that social media, and yourselves included, can be at the center of this revolution. You can set up an online media hub to help gauge the interest that your journalists have in your content. You can set up a social media dashboard and connect it with a social media campaign or social media conversation tracking and plug that in to your business system. You can take site analytics and overlay that on social media and see what your conversion rate is. And then finally, you can use things like geosocial campaigns to see how many people go from your social media platforms to the locations themselves. And all of this comes together to be an incredible and powerful tool, not only for your organization, but also for Dry Ice. Dry Ice is probably one of my favorite campaigns that we've ever done, and it is really interesting to see the results of it. So after all of the campaigns that we've done, all the co-brands we've worked with, that's what's most interesting. And I'll tell you how it started out. Airgas Industrial. These guys create oxygen, they create carbon dioxide, they create gosh knows how many other industrial gases for hospitals, for retail, just a whole host of things. But they have this one little black sheep part of their company that really does nothing. It was stagnant for dozens of years. And what they did was they came to us and they said, okay, well, we'd like to boost our bottom line. And so we took a look at that little thing and said, how are we going to sell this? Well, the first thing we did was we tapped customer intelligence. We did both quantitative research, we actually went out and put surveys in the field to identify what the awareness of dry ice was, and also if people knew how to buy it, and if they didn't know how to buy it, what were their barriers to purchase. We talked to their sales team and understood their process and what the steps had to occur in order to get to the bottom of actually purchasing a thing of dry ice. And then we finally went to social media and we overlaid some qualitative data on that. And we found some really remarkable verbatim. So with all of this conversation, all of this stuff, we were able to come out with a couple of key insights. The first of which is that people think dry ice is cool. They love it, no pun intended, I guess. But the idea is that dry ice really has this amazing power of just captivating both adults and children alike, especially around Halloween. The second thing we noticed is that people like to get creative with it. They love to put it into their recipes. Chefs love it. Bartenders love it. But the single question that kept on coming time and time again was, where do I buy dry ice? How many of you in here are confident that you know where to buy dry ice? I guarantee you that after this presentation, shut up, Jordan. After this presentation, I guarantee you, you will know where to buy dry ice. So we took the insights that we garnered this process, and we said, how do we get these guys to pay attention to us? And as other speakers have talked about, we decided to curate content. We created a blog, and we also created videos. We created ways of satisfying the interest.
Happy football season, everyone. Here's a helpful tailgate tip to make your cooler last longer and your munchies stay drier with Penguin brand dry ice. Place a bag of Penguin brand dry ice at the bottom of your cooler and then cover it with wet ice. This will not only make the ice last longer, but it will also lower the temperature of the cooler so that you can include ice cream or other frozen treats by submerging them in the wet ice. Avoid using glass bottles in a dry ice chilled cooler. Glass becomes brittle and more likely to break in dry ice temperatures. Be the hero of your next tailgate. Keep your cooler colder longer and your food drier by adding Penguin brand dry ice.